Welcome to One Last Blade. Today, I'm going to show you the best way to assemble all of the models from the Grey Knight's Combat Patrol. This is a kit you can buy from Games Workshop that, money-wise, is a really good deal. It comes with 5 Terminators, 5 Strikes, librarian, and a dreadknight, which is great. If you're looking to start a Grey Knight's army, it's an awesome place to start. Just from, like, the price point alone is excellent for all of these. I do want to say, right off the bat, it is called Combat Patrol, and a lot of people are looking to build just that, a 500-point list, which is what I'm going to be focusing on here. I'm going to be assuming that you're going to be doing sort of like introductory 500-point games. But right off the bat, it should be noted that it is impossible to build a 500-point list from this box. All these models, bare bones. Don't give the librarian any weapons. Don't give the dreadknight any weapons. Just running the dreadknight without any of his guns or any melee weapons, just fists. It is 545 points. There's no way to go cheaper than that. So this video is going to be based off of current points values, which will change in the future. My approach to this is going to be that of somebody who's looking to get into the hobby right now in December of 2022. So this probably won't be relevant in the future. So the first thing, to make it 500 points, we need to cut some things out. I really didn't want to. I wanted to utilize everything from this box, but it's just impossible, unfortunately. We can't use every single model, but I want to use as many models as possible. I got my fancy Warhammer app here. Again, I know a lot of folks are really into using Battlescribe. I'm trying to switch to this app, which is fine. It's not the best. Battlescribe, though, has proven to be less than reliable in its permanency lately. And so until a better solution is created by somebody in the community, I'm going to be using Games Workshop's OK app that at the very least is stable. So this is the best we can do for 500 points. The librarian as our HQ, obvious. Our troops are going to be a unit of strikes, and we're going to take out 2 Terminator models. I know, especially coming from me, that sounds terrible. We're going to not use 2 of the Terminator bodies here, but I will tell you why, and I'll also show you why it's actually okay to just leave 2 Terminator bodies, and good for people who love Terminators. We're not going to be running the Terminators as a Terminator squad. We're going to build them as paladins. Because paladins can run in a minimum unit of 3, which cuts off just enough points to give the dreadknight 1 weapon. So we will be running a squad of 3 paladins, and then we're going to be running a dreadknight who will have no melee weapons. He will have just his fists, and we're going to add a psi cannon onto that. So to go over that again, we're going to have 1 HQ, who's a librarian. He has no weapon upgrades. We're doing strike squads. They're going to be bare bones as well. We're going to do paladins, 3 of them, who are going to be the core of our force. And then we're going to do the dreadknight with 1 weapon, a psi cannon. That's it. That is a clean 500 points, and it is, in my opinion, the best way to build this box. I'm going to go over why that is as I'm building all the models. Okay, the Grey Knight's Combat Patrol. The first thing we're going to do is remove all of the plastic from here, which is always a fun step. I don't know, it's like opening up a toy on Christmas. Only one person can ever open the plastic on box. And it was me. I've done it. Also, wanted to say real quick, I didn't clean up my workspace, and I apologize for that. You know what? I don't apologize for that. I purposefully didn't clean it up because I don't really like the idea of presenting like a sterile, sort of clean, professional-looking space, especially since that's not how I work. I work in a very like messy sort of spot with a little window that looks outside. That's it. So this is what my desk looks like at all times. In any case, let's see what we got in here. I won't be needing this just because I've built all of these kits so many times. But I strongly recommend using this, going through and building as it instructs on there. Yeah, so let's see what we got. Got all our bases, always nice. so weird. I don't really play with strikes, so it's bizarre seeing Grey Knight bases this small. Here, we have the librarian. This is very easy. We're gonna put this one together real quick. There's gonna be one caveat to it, and I will explain what it is as we do it. Then we've got the dreadknight. These in multiple sprues here. Always smaller than I anticipate with the dreadknight. We got Terminator sprues, which is these three right here. And then we've got the strike sprues. And yeah, that's about it. The very last, we have the dreadknight's weird oval-shaped base. I always think dreadknights should be on like the circular redemptor bases. It's so strange that they're on these super wide bases. So we want to get our tools. Tool-wise, we got my snips. These are my crappy old army painter ones that I don't know if you can tell from there, but they've got like ruined like snipper part there. It broke a little bit, so it's uneven. It's not great. I need to replace this at some point. Plastic glue. I much prefer plastic glue to super, just because of its very much more permanent. Super glue can snap. And then a blade. My blade sucks, so I'm gonna replace it. And with a fresh knife. Oh god, there it is. And I have just one left. One last blade. Title drop. So, the librarian, important to note with this, the librarian does not get his Stormbolter by default. Every other Grey Knight has a Stormbolter built into their points cost. Librarian doesn't. You have to pay an extra 5 points for it. We don't have the points to spare in a 500 point list, and honestly, a Stormbolter on a single character isn't going to do a whole lot. So, we're not going to build him with the Stormbolter on there. We're instead going to use his little grabby, pointy hand right there. So we'll put that together real quick. Always make sure after snipping him out that you do two things. You find all the little points where your clippers snipped on, and you shave it free so that it's smooth. You also find all of the mold lines, like right along his leg there. Just take the edge of your knife at an angle, just run it up and down a couple of times until it gets rid of the mold line. Be very careful with this so that you don't remove things like the, what do you call that? Rivet right there. You only want to remove the mold lines themselves. Okay, there we go. That's all we're building of the librarian from the librarian sprue. Now, I hear you saying, but Stefan, this is hardly a completed model. He's missing a shoulder pad, he's missing an arm. What do I do with this? So, we want to make him look as Grey Knights as possible. Just bog standard from these bits on here. He's just gonna look like your average Space Marine Terminator librarian. We want to make him look special. So, the librarians in our book, they don't actually have the like traditional force stave that the normal librarians take. He actually takes one of our weapons. So, here, we turn to the greatest single sprue that Games Workshop has ever made, which is the Terminator kit. Fortunately, this kit comes with a bevy of arms. The kit itself can only make 5 Terminators. You'll notice there are 6 sets of shoulder pads. So they made one extra for us, which is nice. We'll take some of these shoulder pads and we'll put them onto the librarian there. Okay, so this is a little bit of work here, but ultimately it's going to be worth it. So I've cut out a Grey Knight's Terminator right arm, which we're just going to stick on here as soon as we're ready for it. But you might notice a few things about this. First, most of the Grey Knight's weapons are right-handed. This is a left hand, so we're going to have to do some translocation with some stuff. Second, every Grey Knight's arm has a spot for a Stormbolter on it. If we don't add a Stormbolter on it, there's going to be a weird flat area. You can do two things. You can just add the Stormbolter and then just pay the 5 points for the Stormbolter. It's up to you. I personally don't want to do that, so instead, I'm going to take this little extra book that's on the librarian kit right here, and I'm going to place that where the Stormbolter was, and I'm going to use it as a fun little wrist-mounted book that he's got, so that'll be neat. The second thing we're going to need to do, because all the weapons in the Grey Knight's Terminator kits are right-handed, except for the falchion, you don't want to give him one falchion, that's stupid. We're going to take the actual, like, librarian force stave, and we're going to turn it into a Nemesis halberd. And it's going to be very simple to do that. We're just gonna cut that off. Goodbye. We're gonna find our favorite Nemesis halberd. I'm just gonna pick one at random. It's gonna be this one. We're just gonna free it from its bounds, from its bonds. That's what I was trying to say. And just enough. We don't need to free the whole thing. Just want to fucking. Don't need to free the entire thing, just enough to get that out. And we're just gonna cut it right there so that we can glue it on top. There we go. Look at that. Just a little blade. All right, I'm gonna glue that on top of the staff. Nothing complicated, just a halberd blade thrown on top of the fourth staff, and it's ready to be put onto the Grey Knight's arm. There we are. Super simple conversion. A little book on there. You can barely tell that there was supposed to be a Stormbolter on the arm. Next thing, we're just going to add his shoulder pads. The librarian, who looks a little bit more Grey Knights focused as opposed to just a generic librarian. I always put my characters on a little piece of corkboard. It makes them a little bit more prominent, stand out a bit more. This guy's going to have a lot of presence on the table though. All right, so the next step, we're going to build the Strike Marines. Get the fuck out of here, word bearers. This isn't your video. Strike Marines. Those of you who watch my channel regularly know I don't run Strike Marines. I just don't, because in a larger game of Warhammer, you can take Terminators instead as a troops choice. So why would you ever take basic power armored Space Marines if you could take Terminators? I don't understand. But for this box and for the purposes of this video, I'm going to build some Strike Marines because I imagine most of you will want to use Strike Marines because they got cool helmets. Another thing that some of you might be aware of is when I'm building basic power armor Grey Knights, I typically don't use the legs that come in the box because they are tiny. They're little tiny legs. I tend to use Deathwatch legs because they're better proportioned and they make them stand a little bit taller. But I imagine most people who are getting this box and looking to just build 500 points of Grey Knights aren't going to want to spend 45, 50 bucks on a box of Deathwatch Tactical Marines just to utilize legs. So we're going to utilize these legs as they come in the box. The Strike Marine kit is very straightforward. I'm going to just build it and come right back. Okay, so my wife had to use the office for a meeting, so I thought I'd just go out into the dining room and put together the strike squads. But there's one thing I have to show you. Real quickly, the Stormbolters on every Grey Knight, they come flat. So I poked 2 holes in there, but they just come flat right across there. And it looks terrible. It looks awful. And I feel like it's almost necessary to put holes in the Stormbolters so you can actually, so it's not just like a flat box sitting on the front of his arm. So what I did with that, I just took my hobby knife and I just poked 2 holes into the front of that and tried to make them as close to the center as possible. So now I'm going to take my pin vise, which this thing is like $2, and I'm just going to use those little guide holes that I made with the knife and just drill in 2 very shallow holes to make them look like barrels. I'll do that real quick. A very simple thing to do. Only takes a second, and it makes it look so much better compared to just the flat sort of thing on the front of those. So this is an important step. Grab yourself a really cheap pin vise and just do that. Okay, so we finished building all these guys. Equipment-wise, first of all, don't throw any special weapons on there. They cost points. We don't have the points to spare. And also, real talk, silencers and side cannons suck. They don't really do much. Both of them have AP1 and an Age of Armor of Contempt. They just don't do anything. Slash, they're both heavy weapons, and you're going to be moving around a lot, so you're always going to get a -1. It's not worth it. But equipment-wise, we chose Force Swords for everything. And the Force Swords, I feel like, are the most versatile, effective weapons we have. Right now, they're Strength 5, AP3, 2 damage, which is pretty much good against everything. You'll never find a vehicle that they're wounding on 6s. They wound most Marine equivalents on 3s. The extra strength from the halberds doesn't come into play as much these days, and the -2 AP isn't great. And then the falchions, while they give you an extra attack, the falchions, They're strength 4, AP 2, and 1 damage. They have 1 worse of everything, but they give you an extra attack. They're just not worth it. I gave one dude a Nemesis warding stave, and I think this is a good idea just because there's a strat. When he's shot at, you can spend a command point and give the squad a 5-up invuln. Comes in handy sometimes when you're getting hit with some really big ordnance and you need to keep a squad alive. But yeah, note on modeling. So this is the Justicar here. There's some very specific bits that go with the Justicar, notably, like per Codex Astartes. The sergeants of most Space Marine squads, they always have the skull iconography. So the skull helmet goes on the Justicar. Additionally, he has the fancy Artificer shoulder pads that just help him stand out. He's also got the little uncrunch. There's one that comes in the Strike Squad kit, and it goes on him. Just anything to make him stand out so that it's very clear to your opponent like who the sergeant in your squad is. Really, the only difference is he has an extra leadership and an extra attack. It's just important to distinguish that a little bit. Oh, right. In lieu of using the Deathwatch legs to make them taller, I put each of them up on a little piece of cork. Cork is super cheap, and it just makes it so that they can... where's that Horse Heresy guy? It just makes it so that they're a bit more comparable in scale to other Space Marines, so that they kind of stand out a bit more in the battlefield. Otherwise, like, look at that size comparison there. They're not going to be great, but he's standing up on that. It does the Tom Cruise thing, where they make him stand on a like an orange crate to make him look tall enough to, like, compared to other actors. But yes, next we're going to do the Paladins. As I've said many times before, the Grey Knight's Terminator box is, I think, my favorite kit that GW makes. It comes with so many options, it's so versatile, and there's just so much stuff. It's really, really good. It allows you, there's enough customizability that you can make any of the characters in the Grey Knight's Codex with just this kit. Speaking of which, we are going to make a squad of 3 Paladins, because that's what we can afford in our 500-point list. That'll give us 2 Terminator bodies left, and when we move forward, we'll be able to use those Terminator bodies to make other characters. Maybe a Chaplain, maybe a Grandmaster, maybe a Brother Captain, maybe an Apothecary, Banner Bearer. All those bits are in here, and so we'll leave those other 2 Terminator bodies so we can make characters. This way we are still fully utilizing this box, eventually, just not right out of the gate. But for now, we're going to make 3 Paladins. Okay, so there are 3 differences visually between Terminators and Paladins. I see a lot of people online in like battle reports and tournament lists and things where people just switch out Terminators and Paladins, and that isn't right. Paladins and Terminators are different. They have different bits, they look different, and they have different roles. And you can't just take a Terminator model and then say, this game he's a Paladin because those are better in the meta right now. Brr. They need to look different. So the key thing is, right here, the classic Grey Knight's Terminator head, the one that looks like a little turtle. This is a Terminator head, just with the very angular solid points. This over here is a Paladin helm. The Paladin is more swooped, very classic, like European Knights kind of thing, whereas the turtle thing goes for the Terminators. So Turtle, Terminators, Knights, Paladins, if that helps at all. I want to use these heads for the Paladins. In addition, the Paladins in crunches, or tilt shields, or whatever you want to call them, they're the ones with the little borders. You're going to paint those silver or gold in order to make them stand out and look a little bit stronger compared to the Terminator ones where you're going to put the individual heraldry on. These are going to look fancy and you want to make them pop a little bit more. The last difference between Paladins and Terminators, it's the books here. The books go on the backs of the Paladins. It symbolizes the Hall of Champions, where the Paladins come from. So the Paladins, it's important to note, are not part of a Brotherhood. They won't have your Brotherhood keyword. They are not part of the same like squad as or the same like battle group as these guys. They come from, there's specifically 100 Paladins in the chamber, or the Hall of Champions on Titan, and the Paladins are sent out on missions to protect Grandmasters or execute powerful demons and things like that. So to symbolize that they're separate, the Paladins are going to be given these books on their backs. And I'll show you a little trick with that in a minute. Okay, so here's a little trick for making these Paladin back books a little more stable. They are plastic, and as soon as you put them into a case, or you drop them, or you even just like brush your hands above them on the table, this is gonna snap. It's incredibly bendable, and breakable. And when it's on the back of a guy, it's just gonna snap so easily. So we're gonna get rid of that problem by just removing it entirely. Snipping it off, making sure it's nice and flush. Then we're going to get a little bit of paper clip. We're gonna trim the back of that just a little bit and grab, well, that's why my clippers are so bad, just a little piece of paper clip. Then we're gonna take our pin vise that we took before. We're gonna drill a hole into the back of the Terminator, just up there where the book goes. And then we're gonna drill it into this as well. Nice little hole. Then we're gonna take super glue, because plastic glue won't work on metal, obvi. We're gonna put the teeniest little dab of super glue into the Terminator armor there. Just the tiniest bit. Oh, that was too much. Then we're gonna take the little paperclip piece, and I got giant fingers, so it's difficult for me to do something this small. I'm just gonna stick that in there. Boop. There we go, lovely. And we're gonna take another little dab of, where'd it go? That's not the one I drilled. We're gonna take another little dab of super glue, put it on there. Yeah, perfect. And slip it right onto that little, love it. There we go. Once that dries, the book will be sitting up there, nice and stable. Lovely. Now he's got a beautiful little back book. I probably could have done that a little bit higher. We'll do it higher on the other two. All right, that guy was a little bit higher, and I think it works a lot better. All right, let's finish up these paladins. Okay, and with that, the paladins are finished. A couple of things to note with this. Make sure you got the encrunch right there on the left shoulder pad. Obviously, drill the barrels again. Liberally sprinkle purity seals wherever you feel like. Put them on some arms and things like that. But yeah, big thing to note is making sure you got the right helmets and you make them look rad. God, these models are so cool. Oh, and a note, I did choose these swords, again, for the same reasons that I talked about with the strikes. Swords are just pretty much our best options at the moment. I would give these guys hammers because of their weapon skill 2. It means the hammers are hitting on 3s, which is still pretty good, unlike a normal Terminator, which is hitting on 4s with a hammer. But hammers are 10 points each, and we don't have the points to spare in this list, so we're getting swords, which are still pretty good. Life is busy, so I brought my dreadknight kit to work on him today. It's been it's been fun. I didn't do any of the things that I usually do, which includes like chopping the knees apart so I can give him some fancy poses. I just wanted to work with trying to pose it the way that I could here. I'm just gonna include the fists and one weapon. That's all we got on here because that's all we can afford in a 500 point list. I want to stress right now though, strongly recommend you build him with the sword or the hammer and 2 ranged weapons because it maximizes the value of these guys. We can't for this hypothetical 500 point list we're doing now, but to anyone who's building a dreadknight for the first time, I strongly recommend doing 2 ranged weapons and a melee weapon of your choice, just because you're going to get more long-term value from that when you expand to beyond 500 points. I put him at a weird angle like this because I'm going to put him on like a tactical rock or something so that he's a little less static. The basic dreadknight, it's a very neutral pose. I don't have any of my basic dreadknights here. I only have my custom ones. So yeah, so this guy, I like cut his legs apart in order to make him stand a bit more interesting and make the pose more interesting on there. Same with this dude, but the basic dreadknight is just very static. So anything you can do to switch up that pose and make it look more dynamic. It's midnight and the shop is closed, so I'm gonna go home and finish this video. And here we go, a 500 point list using the contents of the Grey Knight's Combat Patrol box. That is 5 Strike Marines with swords, 3 Paladins with swords, a librarian, and a dreadknight with no melee weapons and 1 psi cannon. Yeah, again, this is not the most ideal way to build these models, but it is the way to build them into exactly a 500 point list as of December 2022. This way you can play with all the models right out of the gate, and if maybe there's an event at your local friendly game store, or you have a couple of friends who want to just do some 500 point lists, then you can do it. Here you go. And this is pretty fun too. You'll have a really strong sort of like, assuming you give them the right spells, like Armored Resilience, really strong tanky sort of center with your paladins, your librarian who can go around doing support spells or big damaging spells, strike squads for grabbing points and moving around, and a dreadknight, unfortunately without a teleporter because again that's 10 points, but he's still a big chunky guy who can take a few shots before going down. And the fists, while not great, are also no slouch in melee. Anyway, that's this list. I think I'm going to paint this up. Maybe I'll do a 500 point game with these just to see how they play. If that sounds interesting to you, please let me know. If there's a lot of feedback for people who wanted to see me actually play with these models that I built, then I'll do it. But yeah, that's about that. Grey Knights. Hooray! I hope this was helpful in some way, at the very least. It shows some of my modeling practices that I do in order to like optimize kits and make them look good and make them stand out a little bit more. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. As always, like and subscribe. That kind of thing really helps out. And a big shout out again to all my folks on my Patreon. It's not like a ton of money that I get from that, but it's just a little bit, and it allows me to engage in the hobby more and allows me to make some purchases that normally I wouldn't be able to because like rent and food and stuff. So thank you so much for everyone who supports me, and yeah, Merry Christmas. I'll see you all in the new year.